Tell us about why the Great Lakes are so important to you and what can be done to preserve and save the Great Lakes.
Well, first off, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for moderating this. I appreciate that, and everybody joining here today. This is a great Zoom call. I look forward to hearing from all the other panelists and talking about some of the big issues that we're facing as a country right now. And as you mentioned, Michigan's a battleground state. This is a key election, and when you think about what's at stake in this election, probably the most consequential one we'll have in our lifetime, particularly given what we've seen over the last 4 years from Donald Trump and how we have to make sure we're leaning in on the things that we care deeply about. And the first question right out of the box is talking about climate change, the existential threat related to that, what it means to the Great Lakes. And as Michiganders, we really see the Great Lakes as something part of our DNA. I mean, it's just without question next to our people, the most important resource that we have here in our state. You think about the recreational values of it. You think of some of the values related to fisheries, but it provides drinking water to 40 million people as this large body of fresh water. It's something that we have to make sure we're protecting and keeping vibrant for generations to come. I think that's one of our sacred responsibilities, is that we pass that on to the next generation, and they will then do the same thing. And the world, as you know, is getting thirstier as well. And the fact that we have this resource of fresh water here is just incredibly important. Other folks may want it as well. We can't let them have that. This is our resource, but it really adds to our state and to our communities. And they're under threat. There's all sorts of threats for it. You mentioned climate change. Climate change has an issue as we're seeing temperatures increase. Some of the algal blooms we're seeing in our Great Lakes now, which is are outbreaking as because the water is warmer. We're seeing rising lake levels as well as a result of what's happening. The flood events, kind of the natural kinds of natural disasters that can occur, are also increasing. We just had a major flood event up in Midland that displaced 10,000 people from their homes as a result of a storm that came in, and then old dams actually blew out and failed as a result of those waters forcing folks out. You know, all of these are the kinds of impacts from climate change. And as a member, as you mentioned, as the ranking member on Homeland Security, Committee Homeland Security, FEMA is part of my jurisdiction, which is the Federal Emergency Management folks that deal with natural disasters. They're overseeing the COVID response right now, for example. But we'll be very busy all across the country, not just floods, but you're looking at hurricanes, you're looking at wildfires in California and the West Coast. All of those are a result of what we're seeing in climate change. But a little aspect with Great Lakes, some things that I'm particularly engaged in is one, we've got to keep them clean. And we have fought aggressively to provide funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which is money that is provided to communities all through the Great Lakes Basin to put forward projects to keep them clean. And you think about, for example, old toxic sites back in the day before there were really environmental regulations, all sorts of bad things were done around the lakes, and toxic dumps, those got to be cleaned up because they leach the chemicals out there. So how do we go back and make sure we clean up some of the things that happened in the past? We want to do that. Rebuild marshes. So nature, she's pretty amazing on cleansing water through wetlands and other issues as the rivers come in, but we have to restore that, and it's a commitment. And it's interesting, this is an incredible program that has helped so many communities all through the Great Lakes, not just Michigan, all the states that border the Great Lakes. And yet, to put it in context, Donald Trump, nearly every single year he's been in office, he wants to zero it out or cut it by 90%. Basically walking away from the Great Lakes, which is pretty outrageous. I've fought it aggressively. I stood up, said no when Trump wanted to cut these funds. We worked with my colleagues. The good news is every year we've been able to restore it. And actually this last year, I was able to get additional money, a record amount of money for Great Lakes restoration funding to make sure that we keep the lakes as safe as possible going forward. The other issue I'll mention too, and I know we're limited on time because I got to go vote again. That's why I'm in this nondescript conference room right now, so and I'm in my tie here. We had to find a conference room outside of the Capitol because this is not official. So here I am with some pretty harsh light, and I'm going to have to run once they call the next vote. But I just wanted to say the other real issue that we're focused on is oil. Oil and water don't mix, especially in the Great Lakes. And we have a real old pipeline, for example, up in the Straits of Mackinac. It's called Line 5. It runs all the way from Canada. It's Canadian heavy tar sands oil, kind of the dirtiest oil, and then goes to the East Coast. But it runs through Michigan, and it goes underneath the Straits of Mackinac, where the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula come together. It's an old pipeline, 60 plus years old. It just sits on the lake bed. It's not even buried. It's there on the lake bed. It's a ticking time bomb. University of Michigan did a study which was very clear. It is the absolute worst place anywhere in the Great Lakes to have an oil spill. And the Straits, we have that Mackinac Bridge, you got the Straits with the water going through. The water that goes back and forth in the Straits is equal to the amount of water times 10 times the amount of water that goes over the Niagara Falls. I mean, that's the massive amount of water there. And so you can imagine having an oil spill there and have it spread all over pristine areas that would be contaminated. So we have to get rid of that. And we also have to have tighter regulations for these oil pipelines. I was able to pass legislation to make everything in the Great Lakes Basin, not just the Straits of Mackinac, but the whole basin is now considered a high consequence area, which means it's subjected to the most rigorous federal oversight that you can have. And we remember what happened in the Kalamazoo River a few years ago when we had an oil pipeline break, the most expensive pipeline break in the history of the country, over $1 billion of damage. And you never really fully recover when you have something like that happen. It's not just the dollar amount. So we can't let that happen again. We're going to be focused on making sure we keep our lakes as clean and pristine as possible. And that's why I worked on that legislation. But there's a whole lot more to do. We could talk the whole call on that. But
I was going to say, that's a whole call, I think. Unbelievable. Thanks for your great work on that, Senator. Another topic that greatly resonates with our younger voters is criminal justice reform. Wayne Kramer, the great guitarist from the MC5, singer, songwriter, and as I just learned, dancer. I would like to throw the floor to him to discuss his nonprofit Jail Guitar Doors and the work he is doing to bring music into jails. Wayne?
Thanks. It's an honor to be here with you, Senator. Public service is admirable, and I appreciate the efforts that you're putting in. I didn't know that about the pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac. That deserves more attention because you're right. If that blows up, it's hell to pay.
Right.
Yeah. We run a nonprofit here in California that's nationwide in scope, working with prison officials to use art and specifically music as a tool for rehabilitation. We know that art is one of the most effective ways we can reach people on a deep enough level to affect a change of heart. Education is important. Half the prisoners here in California are illiterate, and it's hard enough to get a job when you know how to read, let alone not knowing how to read. But if you educate a criminal, you still have an educated criminal. So it requires something deeper, a change of heart. And the only thing that'll reach people on that deeper level is art, and in our case, specifically music. Music has a way of, in the creative process, what we do is we run arts and corrections programming in facilities across the country. We're in over 160 American prisons now, including 3 in Michigan, at the Ryan Reentry Center in the city of Detroit, up at Ionia, and at Saginaw, the Saginaw Correctional Center. And I'd like to get into more Michigan facilities. Maybe you can help me with that, Senator.
Yeah.
What we found is that we can make an ability available to prisoners that allows them to express complex and often painful memories and feelings in a non-confrontational way for the first time, that they can tell their story. Everybody has a story, and we all want our story to be heard. And people in prison have some stories. And they want to talk about things. They want the world to hear what happened to them. And we can do that by showing them that in this process of creativity, of writing a song, of telling your story in a song, it allows them to get that story out, and it transforms them. Because once they've started to do that, they start to see that they're not locked into that identity that brought them to prison of being a tough guy or a gangster or think that you're slick, but you could be someone in the world as an artist. You could be someone in your family's eyes as an artist, that you could create something of beauty. You could bring something positive to the world, that you're not just the sum of the worst possible day in your entire life. And we've seen in empirical studies the efficacy of it, that here in California, we've seen recidivism rates for prisoners that participate in arts and corrections programming. The recidivism rates have dropped sometimes as much as 60%. I know in Michigan, as a direct result of rehabilitative and arts and corrections programming, recidivism rates have come down in the last decade from 40% to 27%. So we have some good allies in the Michigan Department of Corrections, and we want to continue to work with them to develop it further.
Wow, that's incredible work, Wayne. That's a great program. I think Michigan would, and the senator would probably be glad to get involved. It's really awesome. Senator,
if I could jump in, Stephanie, about that, because
Yeah.
I would definitely, Wayne, that is pretty powerful, and what the evidence you have there. You know, as you're talking about it, I'm reminded I do a lot of work and been really focusing on helping returning veterans who may be suffering from the invisible wounds of war through PTSD. And I've always been amazed, you know, folks who are really suffering amazing or very challenging trauma and very tough situation. One of the most effective therapies for someone suffering from PTSD is art therapy, because it touches the soul.
Yep.
In ways that we feel and we know, but it's demonstrated even in some of those extreme cases. The best way to get to someone is through music. So it's and art generally, not music and the visual arts and others. So I'd love to work with you, Wayne.
Sure, yeah, theater, writing, sculpture, dance,
Right.
and really anyone that's served time in America's prisons is suffering from a degree of PTSD.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's the same with veterans. It's the same process.
Right.
That's incredible. Great work, Wayne. Senator, you know, we as the public are no longer immune or ignorant regarding the problems surrounding our criminal justice system. It's, you know, been on the forefront, I think, and it really has resonated with younger people. We've seen them in the streets. We've been hearing what they're saying. Wondering, how can we seize this historic moment to bring about meaningful change in policing and the criminal justice system overall?
Well, we have to, and we have to take bold action and take action that's concrete. We're past the time of talking about things and studying. There's a number of things that we know we can do right now. We just have to pass it. Unfortunately, and this goes back to the election in politics, and politics really does matter, is that there are things like banning chokeholds and dealing with independent investigations, things that I'll mention. And actually, a lot of that was passed in the House under the Democratic control. The Democrats have control of the House. A very comprehensive package was passed dealing with things that we know that must be done. We don't need to study it further. And yet in the Senate, and with Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans, they put an alternative package together that basically called for more studies and more examination, and really was nothing concrete. Basically set the bar so low that it was you couldn't have really a meaningful discussion. In fact, as the Republicans put that legislation forward, Wendell Anthony from Detroit, the NAACP, the Council of Baptist Ministers, the Urban League, all of our civil rights groups all said, you can't vote for this Republican proposal because that gives some legitimacy to it, and it's nothing. We've got to focus on raising the bar and deal with some meaningful action. The only way we're going to be able to do that is we're going to have to take the control of the Senate. We're going to have a Democratic majority in the Senate is the only way we're going to do it. When we elect Joe Biden and we have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, we're going to be able to take action in this area. and it's going to be a top priority. And just a couple of things. I mentioned the chokeholds. There's things we know. You don't need to have chokeholds. That's not something that needs to be part of police. Many police departments have already banned it. We should do that across the country. And you think of some of these techniques. I mean, we all have seared into our mind that image of George Floyd with the knee on his neck. I mean, there's things that are simply unacceptable when it comes to police work. There are other ways to deal with those issues. The other thing that I'm very focused on too is the need to have independent investigations. If a police officer is accused of wrongdoing, you have to take it outside the department and have an independent investigation with a fresh set of eyes, not within the department. You know, ultimately, this is about trust in the community. The community has to trust that if there was an injustice, that injustice is dealt with. And if investigations are done within a community, or excuse me, within the department, then it may just be the good old boys network once again protecting their own. And if the good old boys network protects their own, there's a tremendous breakdown of trust, and then it leads to a whole host of obvious problems as a result of that. So we got to take that out. In Michigan, all the police, they mostly are internal investigations. Grand Rapids is an example where they actually use the state police instead of local. It's those kinds of things we know that can happen. The other bill that I've introduced and working on and have broad support from the NAACP, the Urban League, and others, is to really focus on enhancing community policing, which we know is effective. That's when law enforcement officers know the community, and every bit as important. The community knows them, and so they're a part of the community. It's not like somebody from the outside coming in. And there is a challenge right now to recruit police officers. It is a tough job, and so we have a problem of recruiting officers and community policing. So my bill addresses both. It basically says if you're recruiting someone from the community to work in that community, they want to go into law enforcement, they're from the community, live there a long time, maybe born and raised, that they can get grants from the federal government to go through police academy, through criminal justice training, all the things they need to do to become a police officer, all paid for. The only stipulation is that you have to stay at least 4 years in the department in your community. And what I understand, if someone's been there 4 years, they're going to stay there a whole lot longer. So it really is a way for us to recruit from within. So for example, Detroit. If we have someone who's a longtime Detroiter, born and raised there, they want to be on the Detroit police force, we'll help them get through all the education they need and the training. They just have to stay in the police force of Detroit for 4 years. And then you have people who know the community, were born and raised there, and the community knows them. It's that kind of trust building, all these different aspects that are going to be critical. And those are 3 ideas. Obviously, there are many others, but I'll just get back to my opening statement. Elections matter. We have to win the majority in the Senate, or these things are not going to happen. And that's why my race is important, and why Mitch McConnell is doing everything he can to try to beat me. They've dumped $25 million in negative, nasty, false attack ads just these last 2 weeks because they know the stakes are high. But that's what's on the ballot. That's another issue that's on the ballot here in November, and we have to make sure our voice is heard.
Yes, and I think so important for the voting is to bring in the younger people, because I think the issues and the things that you're talking about resonate with them. That these are things they care about, that are in the forefront of their mind. And trust, man, when you mentioned that, it really that's such a big word. I've never taken that perspective, but that it is. They don't trust, right, that system, and it's. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Senator. Another issue that we wanted to cover was how to protect the music and entertainment industry. Obviously, COVID is killing the different facets of the business. And Senator, I was wondering, and I'm sure everybody else is what is Congress doing? What steps are they taking to address the challenges musicians are facing during the pandemic? And me personally, I'm asking that question, as someone affected by it as well. I'm a manager, I represent artists. They're not getting paid, they're not on tour. It's a difficult time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is an incredibly difficult time, and it impacts different professions and different industries differently, and we have to appreciate that, and how you can't take a one-size-fits-all approach, and that'll hopefully be in the next COVID package that we will hopefully get through. So if I back up, we have to keep small businesses, and musicians are small businesses, entrepreneurs as well, or they work in venues that are small businesses. We have to make sure small businesses survive in this economy, or the economy is going to be weakened and it's not going to recover. There's no way we can get this economy up and running as quick as any of us would like when we get through the health aspects of it fully. If small businesses disappear, they're the engines of growth. They're the people that hire folks. And so that's why we worked, and I worked a great deal on a paycheck protection program that was part of the CARES Act that passed back in March, that allowed businesses to get a grant, basically, to keep people on their payroll, to keep their doors open, to get through the pandemic. But unfortunately, the pandemic has lasted a whole lot longer than any of us would like, and we've run past that point right now. And let me just say, again, being political here, but it's really important. This pandemic is significant, but the reason we're still so immersed in it is because of the mismanagement of what we've seen from the Trump administration. Right out of the get-go, we had a president who didn't understand the complexity of it, or at least didn't acknowledge it. We all remember him saying, this is going to go away. It's all going to be magic. Don't worry about it. He's not a guy who believes in science. And when you're dealing with a pandemic, it's probably a really good idea to talk to scientists and epidemiologists and folks who understand what we're dealing with. And you just look at the rest of the world, in countries that had it when we did. They're in a lot different situation than we are. And this is the United States of America. We should never be in this situation. I just don't know if you saw today, Canada just once again is extending the travel restrictions from Americans going to Canada because we're too risky because of COVID. Can you imagine that? That other countries are saying to America, you don't have this under control, we're not going to let you into our country. That's not the country that I want to live in. I want to be one that's out front, and we're leaders in the world, as opposed to other countries saying it's too big of risk. So we need to continue to focus that. Again, it's about elections to get through. But having said that, we have to help those industries or businesses that are hit in a special way that's difficult. And clearly in entertainment, you're the classic business that you're not going to see people crowding into theaters for a while. That's just not going to happen. And I think of, the convention business, you're not going to have conventions. I mean, even just the hospitality business generally. I mean, I have so many of our restaurants and venues in Michigan. The owners are really concerned. They were able to use the PPP program. They've been opening up their establishments and with outdoor seating and been able to stay together. They're still not where they would be otherwise, but if people are in a tent outside and eating, that allows revenue. But they're really afraid with the winter coming, because sitting outside in a tent in Michigan in August is an amazing experience. In September, it's not so great in January, sitting out in the tent in there. So, they are really worried how they get through that. So we need to have a program to deal with that. And we also have Save Our Theaters. There's a number of pieces of legislation. In fact, I'm on that as well, so that we keep the cultural institutions can still stay running and be able to have a runway to get through the pandemic. And so as this next package that we're looking at, and hopefully we can get it through, the Republicans have, it hasn't been an easy road here, but when we get that through, we'll allow venues to continue to have revenues. And that includes the artists themselves. I mean, part of what I did, and we want to extend this, was I actually wrote this legislation which would help individual artists, which was the Pandemic Assistance Act. I wrote it, which basically opened up unemployment insurance to people who wouldn't normally be able to qualify for it. You had to work for an employer, have to have the unemployment insurance, but now any individual can get it. So I wrote that, and that was actually incorporated in the CARES Act. And hundreds of thousands of people in Michigan were able to get unemployment when they wouldn't have been before. And it's really understanding of like the gig economy. And if you're an independent contractor, if you're an Uber driver, you're driving your Uber, but then you don't have any more passengers, you're in trouble. Traditionally, you wouldn't be able to get unemployment. Now you can get unemployment. So you can keep food on the table, keep a roof over your head, and those supplemental payments. And that would include an individual artist who now doesn't have any gigs. What are you going to do? You're in serious trouble. And there aren't, like, you can go to another job. Those jobs aren't there because you're in the middle of a pandemic. So you would qualify for the unemployment, the enhanced payments. The enhanced payments we hope to extend at some point. But it's that kind of help that we're going to have to make sure continues to be there for folks.
Absolutely. I have many artists that have taken advantage of the unemployment. Thank you for that. Don, I know you're really involved as one of the leaders for the music industry working on relief legislation. Can you tell us more about the dire situation for the music business right now and what policy efforts you are working on, like Save Our Stages and the Restart Act?
Right. Well, look, it doesn't really matter whether you're a record company president or a musician or simply a fan or an audience member. The thing that unites all of us is a belief that music transforms the soul, that brings people together, and it raises our spirits like nothing else on earth can. And in a year like this one, I think we need the power and the salve of live music more than ever. But the pandemic has transformed the live music business into a real disaster area. Now, there's an organization called the National Independent Venue Association. It's made up of more than 2,800 independent live entertainment venues and promoters. And these venues, they were the first ones to be closed. They're going to be the last to reopen. And 90% of them are going to go out of business this year without financial assistance. But beyond the venues and the musicians who perform there, there's another organization called the National Independent Talent Organization. And they work behind the scenes to help the whole economic infrastructure of the live music business, from the roadies and the sound mixers and the lighting designers and the bus drivers to teamsters and gaffers and riggers and stage hands, ticket takers, the ushers, the food and beverage workers. It's estimated, I think, that for every $1 spent on tickets, a total of $12 in economic activity is generated. And all of these people are suffering, and they're all struggling to make ends meet. And I see it firsthand. Now, speaking to you as the president of Blue Note Records, I'm also aware of the inextricable link between live performance and recorded music. The backbone of our business is the career development of our artists, and performing night after night is the way that young artists, they hone their craft, and it's the way they build their audiences. It's the major marketing tool of record companies. Without the venues and without all the people who work behind the scenes, we lose the ability to nurture new artists and to sustain the careers of established artists, both economically and on a creative level. Now, my buddy Dave Grohl has pointed out that together we are instruments in a sonic cathedral, one built together between the musicians and the audiences night after night. And we can only rebuild those cathedrals with help from Congress. The whole network is about to collapse irreparably. As the senator mentioned, there's a lot of legislation before Congress. There's the Save Our Stages Act, the Restart Act, the HITS Act, and they provide long-term assistance to the shut down live music business. Now, Senator, I really want to thank you for being such a powerful advocate for that legislation and for musicians in the entertainment business. I don't think it's hyperbolic at all to say that your reelection is vital to the future of music. And I'm honored to be here today to thank you for your support and to urge everyone who cares about music to support these bills.
Thank you, Don. That was excellent. Wayne, talk about the role you play in, in terms of how music affecting the community.
Beyond the work that I do in corrections?
Yeah, just do you have any thoughts on how music, how it missing from, people's lives in certain ways and, can affect, the community in general?
Yeah, because what we're talking about is art important? Is music important? I would say it's as important as breathing air. In our music and in our art is where we connect, where we form our communities. We all meet in music in those songs. If you like a Bob Dylan song and I like a Bob Dylan song, we've formed a small community between us because we meet in that song. And what art has been able to do historically from back when Oog and Og were in the caves and they drew on the wall and they showed them chasing buffalo that day, They told the story of what was happening in their life that day. That's a story we both can understand this day. And the artists, if they're honest in their work, are telling how they feel. And we all share those same emotions. You know, when Picasso painted Guernica, it was an outrage because he illustrated the horror of war. He was sending a message to his fans. He's sending a message to me when I look at that painting. We all meet in that message. And art tells us at its core that we're not alone, that I'm not the only nutcase out here with these crazy ideas and these crazy feelings, that other human beings share these feelings with me. It reaffirms my humanity. And like I was saying about our work with prisoners, you know, prison itself is designed to strip your humanity from you. It's designed to inculcate in you a sense that you have no value in the world. And creating something from nothing, which is what artists do, is a great argument against that meaninglessness.
See, I knew you had a great answer for that. I love it. Yes, music is so important. And, you know, finally, voting is so important. And Senator, just some final thoughts on what are some of the challenges, you know, that we have to ensure every American vote counts, and what can Congress do to address those challenges?
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And I am, I'm down, the clock is running really low on the vote, so I have to run over to the Capitol. I'll give you an answer on this, but I'll take an opportunity here. Wayne, thank you for those words. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And Don, after you were so complimentary and brought up those bills, I was saying thank you, but I was on mute. So I can now tell you that I am not on mute. And I appreciate your work and really your amazing creative career, all of you, for what you continue to do and the joy you continue to bring to all of us, which is part of this industry. So I appreciate that. Stephanie, thank you for moderating it. Let me just say a couple words and then I'll have to jump off. And, you know, to protect the vote, I mean, one thing that I think is absolutely critical, and I'm in the middle of this race right now, and I talked about all the massive amount of money that's coming into this race and they're dumping against me. You know, there's all these billionaires that have these super funds, these super PACs that are getting there. We have to return the election process back to the people, that it's up to the people to make these decisions. And so campaign finance reform is something I'm very passionate about, something I've always believed in, but now that I've been involved in this campaign, we have to get this big dark money. And this dark money, it's basically undisclosed, and you don't know the agenda behind folks, but you're pretty clear the agenda is not what your agenda is. Our agenda is everyday folks, and they have really great names that sound great. The Koch brothers, for example, who is a big billionaires and a lot of dark money. You know, their group is called Americans for Prosperity. Well, that sounds good. We all want Americans to have prosperity. They forget it's really Americans for the prosperity of a few. They drop that part of a few is what it is. And that's why we need to have full disclosure on this. The House passed a comprehensive campaign finance bill when they came in as Democrats. It won't go anywhere if Republicans are in the Senate. We have to pass it. That will be a priority for us because it goes back, as I mentioned, Stephanie, the idea of trust. The Americans have to trust the system and understand that it is ultimately each and every one of us that have the power to elect folks who are going to represent our values and fight for the things that we care about and make sure we have a fair and equitable society. And that means taking the kind of money out. So to me, that's got to be a priority, and it's certainly a priority for me when we get the majority in the Senate and say the rules right now are stacked against everyday Americans. And we've got to get back to where one vote really matters, really makes a difference, and our activity can change the world. So that's my commitment to all of you. I'm going to continue to do that, and I'm going to go exercise that vote right now across the street at the U.S. Capitol. But thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And Ethan and Gretchen and all my great friends, thank you. Thank you so much for what you do. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. It was a wonderful, wonderful discussion. It was great to hear from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yay. That was wonderful.
If I could jump in here, first of all, I think our conversation tonight was so powerful. Gretchen put this together because she wanted to make sure that we could reach out to younger voters and Co is out there helping us and getting information out to Instagram and all of that. And we really wanted to do something that would be appealing to younger voters too, and to highlight some of the great work that Gary's doing. But in the course of it, we're highlighting some of the great work that Dan and Wayne are doing too, and Co. And so what Wayne said about making those connections through the arts, I mean, yeah, this opportunity, let's continue this dialogue past election day. And yes. And I just hope that, today was an important day. Today was the last day you could register online or in the mail in Michigan. So
I know I had all that to say.
Oh, no worries. No worries. But no. I mean, and so the thing is, you might have friends that have moved or whatever, and reach out to them and see. They can still register, but they have to go to their local clerk to do it now after today. So it's going to be a lot. We really need to make sure that we're checking in with people, for many reasons during the pandemic. But when it comes to voting, checking in with people and seeing if they've got a plan. And you can always go to Gary's website, and there's lots of information there about it. So, but I cannot, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much, Wayne and Dan and Steph, and I've gotta do the backstage people too, right?
Yeah.
Gretchen and Leah and Diane Blackman and Kate Stevenson. And so we really appreciate it, and we're gonna win this thing. And thank you so much for
You're very welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yes.
And I do think, Colleen, I do think that this can be continued. And guys, just know that Gary is a co-sponsor of those bills that's going to help you tour and get your venues open. And it's thanks to Steph and Don and Wayne who've been talking to him about this, but he's been there since the beginning. And I just wanted to, so Gretchen, thank you for letting me be part of this too. And I do think we have to get people out to vote. This is the #1 race in the country, and they are pouring millions in. So go on social media, because I'm too old to know how to do it that well. But please get on and tell people to vote for him.
Hey, you guys that work with the senator, can one of you shoot me an email so I can follow up on his offer of help?
Yep, we can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Also, we recorded this, so everyone's able to share this link once we get it.
Yeah, that was my question. So we can get it out on mine and some of our artists' socials and stuff.
Yep. But thanks to everybody for pulling this together.
Yeah.
Tell Margaret thank you, Wayne.
I will, of course.
My new BFF.
Yay. Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
See you, Don.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Ro, good to see you, man.
Good seeing you, Wayne.
Thanks, Ro.
Peace, power.